I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to make reckless decisions at 65. I clipped coupons. I kept my garden tidy. I planned. But the day I booked that ticket to Vienna, something in me broke loose, some quiet, desperate part of me that wanted to feel needed again. The airline confirmation blinked at me on the screen, a single line of text that cost me over $4,000. Round trip. Economy. No cancellations. My hand trembled when I clicked purchase. I told no one. My son, David, had moved to Austria 3 years ago. First for work, then love, then, well, I stopped asking after a while. His calls became shorter. His voice more clipped. I convinced myself it was the time zones. The distance. The stress. But deep down, I knew something was slipping. When he missed my birthday last year, I cried into a slice of lemon cake I baked for myself. He's busy, I whispered out loud. He'll call. He didn't. But this wasn't going to be a sad story. I wouldn't let it. This was a surprise visit, a mother's love unannounced. I'd show up with the stew he loved, the one with garlic, ginger, and too much pepper, packed in freezer bags and nestled in ice packs. I'd knock on his door, and he'd open it, stunned, then grinning. He'd hug me like he used to. He'd say, "Mom, I can't believe you're here." I sold the Buick the next day. Took a photo of it before the man drove off with it down the street. Goodbye, old friend. Goodbye road trips and grocery hauls and the Sunday market. I dipped into the savings account, my savings. The one meant for soft slippers and cruises I'd never booked. I even took on part-time work at Mrs. Doyle's cleaning company just to cover the rest. My knees ached and my back protested, but the idea of that reunion kept me going. I packed 2 suitcases, one for clothes and one for gifts. Peanut brittle. Photographs. A sweater I'd knitted during lockdown. The stew, of course. I didn't sleep the night before the flight. I cleaned the house, watered the plants, left instructions with the neighbor. Then, before sunrise, I took a cab to the airport. The terminal smelled like coffee and jet fuel. My gate was crowded, filled with tourists and backpackers and businesspeople tapping away at laptops. I sat near the window and watched the plane pull in, a silver giant with its belly yawning open to receive luggage. Somewhere on the other side of the ocean, my son was living a life I'd never seen. And soon, I'd be stepping into it. The flight was long. My seatmate was a kind young woman who slept most of the way, her head resting on the window. I watched the in-flight movie, picked at the rubbery chicken, and stared at the clouds. I imagined his face when he saw me. Maybe he'd tear up. Maybe he'd laugh and shake his head at how dramatic I was. "Only you, Mom." And maybe, just maybe, he'd hold me close and say, "I missed you." When we landed, it was dusk. The sky was painted in lavender and orange. Vienna glowed beneath us, elegant and unfamiliar. I clutched my purse, nerves and excitement warring in my chest. This was it. The beginning of something better. Something whole. Or so The cab ride from the airport was a blur of narrow streets, trams, and people in scarves sipping coffee outside glowing cafes. Vienna was beautiful, elegant and aloof, like a city that didn't need to impress anyone. But I barely noticed it. My palms were sweating. The stew container sat beside me, wrapped in a towel like something precious. My heart beat fast, not with fear, but with hope. The driver dropped me off on a quiet block lined with apartment buildings, most of them older, with tall windows and small balconies where laundry danced in the breeze. I checked the address David had emailed me months ago. Still the same. Still his. I tugged my suitcase behind me, wheels squeaking against the cobblestone. Number 74 was a pale stone building with ivy climbing halfway up the front. A keypad beside the door blinked softly. I didn't have a code. I waited until someone came out, a young man with a bike, then slipped in with a polite nod. Inside, it smelled like old wood and fresh paint. I climbed the stairs to the third floor, my breath catching more from nerves than exertion. His door was a clean white slab with a bronze number 3B. I adjusted my coat, smoothed my hair, and stood still for a moment, listening. I imagined hearing music, laughter, maybe even his voice. But there was only silence. I knocked. Seconds stretched into years. Then footsteps. The door opened. There he was. My son. His hair was longer than I remembered, and he had a bit of scruff on his chin. He wore a navy sweater, sleeves pushed up, and he looked tired. But still, his eyes were the same. Blue-gray like mine. Familiar and strange at once. "Mom," he said, blinking as if I were a hallucination. "Surprise," I said, my voice too high, too cheerful. I held up the towel-wrapped container. "I made your favorite. Chicken stew. With ginger. Remember?" He stared. Then stepped back, just a little. Enough for me to roll my suitcase inside. The apartment was small and clean, the kind of place built for 2, not 3. A pair of women's boots sat by the door. Coats on a hook. A wine glass on the counter, half full. "I didn't know you were coming," he said, not accusing. Just, unsettled. "I wanted it to be a surprise," I said. I hoped, it might be a good time." He ran a hand through his hair. "You flew all the way here?" "Of course I did. You're my son. It's been years." He didn't respond. Just walked into the kitchenette and opened the fridge, moving things around, like he needed to do something with his hands. I set the stew down carefully on the counter. "I can stay at a hotel, if that's easier," I offered, trying not to sound hurt. "I just thought we could have dinner, maybe talk. I missed you." He turned. His eyes looked glassy for a moment, then hardened. "I wish you'd called, Mom. You should have called. I wanted to surprise you." "You did," he said, and this time, it didn't sound kind. A knock on the door made him flinch. He glanced at it, then at me. "That's my girlfriend," he said, lowering his voice. "She's coming over. We were supposed to have dinner." "Oh." I tried to smile. "Well, we can all eat together. I made enough for." "No, I mean. Mom, I don't have room. Or time. For your kind of drama." The words hit like a slap. "Your kind of drama. What does that mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He looked away. "I don't want to do this right now." "David," I said, stepping closer. "I spent everything I had just to be here. I just wanted." But he was already walking toward the door. "I'm sorry," he said, his hand on the handle. "I can't. Not tonight." And then, he opened the door wide. I stood there for a moment, stunned. The hallway was cold. My coat was still in my suitcase. He didn't look at me when he said it again, "You can't stay here." Then he closed the door. I didn't knock again. I didn't beg. I just stood there in the stillness of the hallway, the weight of the stew in my hands, and listened to the silence where a son's welcome should have been. Outside, the rain began to fall. The rain was soft at first, just a mist brushing my cheeks, but it thickened quickly, the kind of rain that sinks through wool and seeps into your bones. I didn't move. Not at first. I stood in front of his door with my suitcase beside me and the stew container in my arms like a newborn. He didn't open the door again. I wanted to believe he was just overwhelmed. That he'd come back out, tug me inside, apologize, blame it on work stress, jet lag, anything. But the only sound that followed was laughter, her laughter, from behind the door. A muffled giggle, a wine glass clink. Plates being set. Chairs scraped. Dinner was served. Just not for me. I turned slowly, pulled my coat from the suitcase, and walked down the steps, each one heavier than the last. The ivy on the front of the building was dripping. My shoes squelched with each step. I didn't have data on my phone, and I hadn't booked a hotel. My mind was cloudy with heartbreak, but instinct kicked in. I needed shelter. I found a hostel 2 blocks away. It smelled of bleach and damp laundry. The girl at the front desk was kind, barely older than David, and spoke perfect English. She raised an eyebrow when I asked for a room and glanced at my suitcase and rain-soaked shoulders. No reservation. No. Only a 4-bed dorm left, she said gently. That'll do. I was too tired to care. She gave me a key card and a towel, and I climbed 2 flights of stairs that felt like a mountain. Inside, the dorm was dim and quiet. 3 beds were already claimed, backpacks on bunks, someone's damp socks drying on the heater. I took the last bunk near the window. The curtain was cracked, revealing the same steady rain. I changed into dry clothes, folded my coat over the heater, and sat on the edge of the bed with the stew still beside me. I didn't cry. Not yet. My body ached, but my heart was hollowed out. Carved clean. A girl entered the room, her face flushed from the cold. She nodded politely, then slipped into bed with headphones on. The others came and went, whispering and chuckling in languages I didn't understand. I was invisible among them. A ghost. Around 10, I opened my suitcase and found a small tin of peanut brittle I'd brought for David. I cracked off a piece and chewed slowly, tasting sweetness and salt. He loved it as a boy. He used to sneak pieces from the jar on the counter when he thought I wasn't looking. I remembered him at 6, giggling with sticky fingers. I remembered him at 10, crying after a bad dream. I remembered him at 18, hugging me goodbye before college, whispering, "I'll make you proud, Mom." That night, I dreamed of snow. Not the soft kind, but blizzards, the kind that blinds and buries. When I woke, the stew had leaked. A small puddle of orange-brown broth spread across the floor beneath my bed. I cleaned it up with hostile towels while the others slept, my hands trembling with quiet shame. I didn't know then that this was only the beginning of what I'd lose. The next morning, the sun came out, but I didn't feel its warmth. I sat in the tiny hostel kitchen with a cup of weak coffee, staring out the window at the quiet street below. People walked by in pressed coats and polished shoes, heading to work, to school, to lives I wasn't part of. I wondered if David had already left for his office, or if he was still at home, sipping espresso with his girlfriend. Laughing. Unbothered. I hadn't slept much. The leak from the stew was cleaned, but the smell still lingered faintly in the fabric of my suitcase. It clung to me like memory. I told myself I'd only stay another day or 2, just to gather myself. To plan the trip back. But every time I opened my phone and saw my nearly empty bank app, reality twisted tighter around me. There was no going back, not yet. Not unless I called someone and asked for help. But who? I had no siblings. My best friend, Brenda, had just started chemo. My pride had walked ahead of me like a shadow on the plane ride here, and now it loomed too large to crawl past. I tried calling David once. Just once. The call rang 3 times, then went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I spent that day walking the city. Vienna was beautiful, impossibly so. Grand buildings with statues peeking from rooftops, golden domes, fountains older than anything I'd ever touched. But I walked through it all like a ghost, each step echoing a question I didn't want to ask: why? Why had he pushed me away? Was it shame? Embarrassment? Did I look like the past he was trying to escape? I found myself sitting on a park bench near a wide canal, where swans floated like porcelain figurines. Children laughed nearby. A little boy tossed breadcrumbs, his mother standing behind him with her hand on his shoulder. I watched them for a long time. And then I cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quiet tears that rolled down and fell into my lap, unnoticed by the world. That night, I heated the last edible bits of the stew in the hostel microwave. I ate alone, sitting cross-legged on my bunk, staring at the ceiling. I made a decision the next morning. I checked out of the hostel and took a tram to the outskirts of the city, where the tourist gloss wore off and neighborhoods were older, simpler. I found a small pension, a guest house, and offered to clean rooms in exchange for a bed. The owner, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, sized me up like she'd seen hundreds of stories in her time and didn't need mine spelled out. She handed me a mop. I spent 3 weeks scrubbing floors, folding sheets, emptying bins. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me something to do with my hands, something to keep my heart from curling in on itself. I became invisible in a different way. No longer a mother in mourning, just another woman with a bucket and quiet eyes. And slowly, very slowly, the ache dulled. Not disappeared, never disappeared, but dulled. I would walk past cafes and markets, watch couples talk, watch old women feed pigeons, and for a moment, just breathe. I didn't stop loving him. I just stopped waiting at his door. Days blended into one another like brush strokes on a blurred canvas, soft, indistinct, almost gentle if I didn't think too hard. Each morning, I woke before the sun. The pension's old boiler clanged awake as I filled a bucket and began my routine, mopping floors, changing linens, scrubbing bathrooms. I wore rubber gloves too big for my hands and a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The work was quiet. Repetitive. But in the silence, I began to hear something I hadn't in years, my own thoughts, uncluttered by expectation. There was a strange peace in becoming anonymous. I walked the city in the evenings. A ghost among cobblestones and cathedral bells. No one knew me here. No one expected anything from me. I didn't have to smile if I didn't want to. I could sit in a cafe for an hour, order the cheapest tea on the menu, and watch strangers live their lives. And still, always, there was the ache. David's voice. The slam of that door. I don't have room, or time, for your kind of drama. Sometimes I'd reach into my coat pocket and find a scrap of the flight itinerary or a receipt from the peanut brittle shop back home. Proof that this wasn't just a strange dream. I visited places I thought he might go, a park near his office, the grocery near his building. I never intended to run into him, but part of me hoped I would. Just a glimpse. Just to know he was real. He never appeared. One evening, I sat on a bench at the Naschmarkt, watching vendors pack up crates of bruised fruit and herbs. A teenage girl nearby was having a loud phone call, angry, fast German, and suddenly burst into tears. Her mother, or perhaps her friend, said something I couldn't understand, but the girl leaned into her shoulder and sobbed like a child. That's when it hit me, all over the world, people were grieving invisible things. Parents. Pride. Childhoods. Apologies that never came. I wasn't alone. Back at the pension, the owner, Gerda, grew used to me. She stopped giving me looks of pity and started offering leftovers from her kitchen. A thick stew with sausage. A slice of apple strudel. A cup of rich, dark coffee. You clean well, she said one morning, wiping her hands on her apron. Quiet, too. That's a gift. I smiled and tucked a stray gray hair behind my ear. Quiet is all I've got left, these days. She didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer answers. But she saw the way I looked out the window, the way I folded a napkin too many times before setting it down. She saw me. And that was enough. 3 weeks turned into a month. I earned enough for a train ticket out of Vienna, but I didn't take it. Not yet. I wasn't ready to go home with nothing but a wound and a memory. I wanted to leave with dignity. With grace. On my terms. Then, one morning, I received a message. An email. From David. Just 2 lines. I heard you were in Vienna. I didn't know everything. Please, can we talk? My hands froze over the keyboard. The ghost in the city had just been seen. I stared at the screen for a long time. 2 lines. So simple, so small. But they cracked open everything I had carefully sealed shut. I heard you were in Vienna. I didn't know everything. Please, can we talk? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then dropped. No. Not yet. I couldn't just come running again, not like before. I needed time. I needed to understand whether this was guilt or genuine. Whether he saw me now, or just saw the outline of a mistake. So I waited. That night, I sat with Gerda on the back steps of the pension. She smoked a cigarette, the tip glowing in the dark. I didn't smoke, but I liked the smell, something earthy and old and honest. He emailed, I said softly. She didn't respond at first, just exhaled a stream of smoke and watched it drift upward. You'll see him? She asked finally. I don't know. You want to? I nodded. Then go. But not for him. For you. The next morning, I replied. A short message. Meet me at Café Corb. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Café Corb was old-fashioned, tucked down a side street, not far from the city center. I chose it because I had been there once in my first week. The coffee was terrible, but the chairs were soft and the waitress wore shoes that squeaked. I arrived early. Too early. I sat at a table by the window, my hands wrapped around a chipped mug. I watched the door. My heart thudded like it was trying to run ahead of me. At 10:07, he arrived. He looked different than that night, less tired, less guarded. His coat was wrinkled, and he had a folded paper under one arm. He scanned the room, saw me, and hesitated. Then he walked over. Hi, Mom. His voice cracked just a little. Hi, David. He sat across from me like I was a stranger at a job interview. Awkward. Stiff. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the menu but didn't open it. I didn't know, he said. Didn't know what? I asked gently. His eyes met mine. That you spent your retirement money. That you don't have a place to stay. I thought, he stopped. I thought you were just visiting for a few days. I thought it was another one of your impulsive things. Ah. Impulsive. Like that time I packed us up and left your father. Like when I turned the garage into a candle-making business to pay your tuition. Like every time I made something out of nothing to keep us afloat. He saw those things as drama. I saw them as survival. I came because I missed you, I said, voice low. I wanted to see who you'd become. I wanted you to know I was proud, even from afar. His shoulders fell. I thought you were coming to judge me. Or worse, move in. I panicked. I was wrong. I've been wrong about a lot. Silence sat between us, heavy but not hostile. I didn't know you were still here, he said. A friend saw you cleaning rooms at the pension and told me. I didn't believe it at first. Well, I said, the beds don't make themselves. He smiled faintly, ashamed. Why didn't you come back to me? You closed the door, I said, simply. His eyes welled. He blinked quickly. I've been trying to unhear that sound every night since. I nodded slowly. Some sounds don't fade. They shape you. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. Come stay with me. Just for a few days. Let me make things right. No. His face fell. Not yet, I added. Maybe not ever. Not because I'm angry, but because I'm different now. I found my own way, David. You don't get to rewrite what happened. But maybe, if you want, we can write something new. He sat with that. It took him a while. Then he nodded. I'd like that.